Welcome to a new video here on my channel. Today, I'm excited to present part 18 of the story Pandora and the Eternal War. If you've made it this far into the story, it seems like you've been enjoying it just as much as I've enjoyed telling it. I truly hope you'll stick around for the journey, just as I planned to. If you'd like to hear more stories from me in the future, feel free to let me know in the comments. That being said, I have to admit I'm not the best at keeping up with social media like Twitter and other platforms, so I might not be able to read everything. But enough of the small talk. Let's dive straight into the story. Here it is, Pandora and the Eternal War, Part 18.
First constellation Astralis, Chaos Eater. During their time at Helios Academy, the group of friends grows closer. Their training becomes routine, and they begin to learn about the legal system and the structure of hero society. They discover that to officially operate as a hero, one must acquire a hero license. This license not only legitimizes a hero's actions, but also allows them to receive salaries from the Heroes Association. A hero's rank in the registry increases with every heroic deed performed, and the more lives they save, the higher their standing, and naturally their income. What excites the students most is the opportunity to earn money by hunting monsters in the unexplored regions or chaos zones. However, these tasks require caution and extensive preparation, as the complexities of these zones make them perilous. For now, their instructors emphasize mastering their abilities as the foundation for their journey. As the first month at the academy draws to a close, life at the school settles into a semblance of normalcy following the murder of one of its students. Most have moved on, turning their gaze toward the future. Yet, it is on this day that an alert from the Heroes Association's satellite monitoring system disrupts the calm. Optical fluctuations have been detected within a chaos zone on the Sol continent, specifically in Ariel 65, a remote and isolated region near the continent's edge. The area, which once bore witness to many battles against the vampires, is categorized as a C-rank chaos zone. While still dangerous, it is considered a viable location for experienced hunters to engage with monsters, provided they take extreme caution. The anomaly reported is bizarre enough to leave the monitoring officer stunned. In the center of the chaos zone, a faint violet dot has appeared. Initially dismissing it as a visual glitch, she notices something far stranger. The overall level of chaos energy in the zone is decreasing. The visual distortions that signify the presence of chaos are visibly weakening. Furthermore, the intensity of the violet hue, indicative of the zone's strength, has diminished, as seen in the crystals scattered across the zone. The system's analysis confirms her observations. The brightness of the chaos zone has reduced by 4%. Though seemingly minor, this decline is unprecedented. Chaos zones are typically stable, maintaining their intensity for centuries unless actively interfered with. Confused, she stares at the screen, murmuring a quiet, "Huh?" before the brightness decreases again, this time by 1%. Realizing the anomaly is genuine, she immediately contacts her superior. "Dr. Walter, we have an unidentified phenomenon in Ariel 65, near the front lines." Her voice trembles as it echoes through the office. Dr. Walter, head of the Department for Catastrophe Management and Villain Countermeasures, nearly chokes on his coffee at the mention of an unidentified phenomenon, UP. In his experience, a UP usually signals either a massive vampire offensive or something far worse. Something unheard of. Setting his cup down, he rushes into the adjacent control room, bustling with analysts and operators. His eyes land on the holographic display showing the source of the disturbance, a time-lapse of the chaos zone over the past 2 hours. The data confirms it. The zone's intensity has dropped by 5%, an impossible occurrence given that the zone was estimated to last another 450 years without intervention. Yet here it is, weakening rapidly. "Can someone pull up the expected lifespan of this chaos zone?" he barks. Seconds later, the hologram updates, displaying the staggering figure of 450 years. The room falls silent as the team grapples with the implications. The weakening halts at 6%, only adding to the confusion. Dr. Walter finds this abrupt cessation even more unsettling than the initial anomaly. The Heroes Association is thrown into turmoil. The last recorded instance of a chaos zone behaving abnormally coincided with the reappearance of Elias Krakar, an S-rank criminal infamous for his copy Arcanus. Once a promising candidate for the Heroes Kalno Association presidency, Elias had become one of its most dangerous deserters. In light of the disturbance, the association's department heads convene for an emergency meeting. Despite hours of deliberation, they are unable to pinpoint the cause of the fluctuation, until the end of the session when something extraordinary happens. Sky Lightville, often called the Oracle, senses a profound shift in the flow of time. Though she receives no clear vision, she feels the threads of potential futures unraveling. Normally, Sky is accustomed to witnessing the constant birth and death of possible timelines, an inevitable byproduct of free will. With every decision made, countless unrealized futures simply vanish. But this is different. The dissolution feels immense, significant, as if something monumental is altering the very fabric of reality. Her instincts, owned through years of experience, tell her to trust her feelings. And what she feels now is that whatever has caused this anomaly is far greater than anything the Heroes Association has faced before.
Sky Lightville adjusted her shawl as the flickering hologram of the council room came into focus. Her breathing was labored, her usually steady hands trembling as she prepared to speak. The room, bustling moments ago with heated debates and scattered conversations, fell silent as her silhouette appeared on the central display. Beside her faint figure was a projection of Aerial 65, a chaos zone located in an active war zone. The display highlighted the vortex forming within the area, a swirling anomaly surrounded by violet mist. At its center, an impossibly bright pinpoint of light pulsated ominously. The members of the Hero Association's Emergency Council leaned forward in their seats, their expressions a mix of apprehension and respect. Few things could silence this chamber, but an incoming call from the Oracle was among them. "Sky!" Dr. Walter spoke first, his tone urgent yet tinged with concern. "Your timing couldn't be more crucial. What do you see?" Sky coughed sharply, her body shuddering with the effort. The room collectively stiffened at the sound. Worry etched into the faces of even the most stoic members. "I'll be fine." Sky waved a frail hand dismissively, though her holographic form flickered with the motion. "Your concerns are noted, but irrelevant. What I have to share cannot wait." Her voice, though weak, carried the weight of certainty. The attention of the room was absolute. "I've been observing the anomaly at Ariel 65, she began, her tone measured. "The war zone in that area is growing weaker, rapidly. The chaos zone is collapsing, and at this rate, I suspect it will completely vanish within the next week." A ripple of shock swept through the room. Several council members exchanged uneasy glances, while others muttered under their breath. The collapse of a chaos zone, especially in such a volatile area, was nearly unheard of. Sky continued, her tone grave. "This is not just a C-rank zone anymore. Its rank is plummeting by the day, faster than anything we've seen before. I cannot predict its exact trajectory, but I know this much. Sending any C-rank hero into that zone now is a guaranteed suicide mission, a fool's errand." Her words cut through the heavy silence like a blade. One of the senior analysts hesitated before speaking. "But Sky," he began cautiously, "if we don't send someone to investigate—" "Don't even consider sending a C-rank," Sky interrupted sharply. "If you value their lives, you will reconsider. And as for B-rank heroes—" She hesitated, her expression clouding. "You don't have enough who are truly prepared for something like this. You know it as well as I do." "Doctor," Walter ran a hand through his hair, his composure faltering. "And the remaining 20%? Is there any chance this is one of those outcomes that simply dissolves?" Sky's lips pressed into a thin line. "Perhaps, but the odds aren't in your favor. Free will can defy the flow of time, but the currents here are strong. Too strong to ignore. The consequences of misjudging this, they could be catastrophic." Another fit of coughing seized her, and she struggled to steady herself. "You shouldn't push yourself," one of the junior council members said, concern evident in her voice. "This isn't about me," Sky snapped, her frustration briefly surfacing. "This is about the prophecy, the one I delivered last year." The room fell deathly silent. Everyone present knew the prophecy she spoke of. It was one of the most chilling pronouncements the Oracle had ever made. If the traitor is wrongly slain, The child of chaos will rise from the bodies. And when the child of chaos gazes upon the river of time, it will already be too late. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, their weight suffocating. Sky continued, her voice quieter now, but no less intense. This anomaly, this vortex, it's connected to that prophecy. I can feel it. The timelines around it ripple with the same energy. And there's more. In the fractured glimpses I've seen, one name keeps surfacing. A name tied to the chaos. They call themselves the Demon King, or sometimes the Demon Queen, and they will gather followers, individuals they name constellations. A collective shiver ran through the room. Even those who pride themselves on their skepticism couldn't suppress their unease. But, Sky added, her voice faltering slightly, I cannot say with certainty whether all of this will come to pass. Some of these fragments may dissolve into the 20 cent, the unrealized possibilities. The threads of fate are fragile, and I cannot see where they will lead with absolute clarity. Dr. Walter's voice broke the tension. Sky, are you certain about the connection to the child of chaos? Sky's gaze sharpened. Certain enough. If I'm wrong, then so be it, but if I'm right... She let the implication hang in the air, her meaning unmistakable. Another cough racked her body, and the council members exchanged uneasy glances. Your health! My health is of no concern. Sky snapped, her voice regaining a fleeting strength. Focus on what matters. Heed my warning. Prepare for the worst. The room remained silent, the enormity of her words sinking in. Finally, Dr. Walter nodded, his expression grim. We'll act on your guidance, Sky, and we'll hope, pray, that this is one of the 20%. Sky's silhouette flickered once more as she offered a final word. Hope is a luxury. Prepare. With that, the projection blinked out, leaving the council in uneasy silence. The image of the vortex in Aerial 65 lingered on the central display, its eerie glow a haunting reminder of the unknown dangers that lay ahead. Sky Lightville disconnected the holographic call with a trembling hand. The strain of the conversation etched deeply into her youthful-looking face. The glowing display in front of her faded into darkness, leaving her alone in the quiet expanse of her opulent home. The luxurious surroundings, marble floors, gilded furnishings, and panoramic windows overlooking the city skyline, felt hollow, a stark contrast to the weight she carried. With a labored sigh, she shuffled toward her bedroom, each step heavier than the last. The ornate bed loomed ahead like a distant island in a stormy sea. As she collapsed onto the soft mattress, her body seemed to sink deeper than it should have, as though the bed itself could sense her exhaustion. Moments later, her house physician, a man whose name she could no longer recall, though she knew he had been caring for her for years, entered the room. His graying hair and weathered face bore the marks of time, but his eyes were sharp with worry as he approached her bedside. Sky barely registered his presence at first, her thoughts tangled in the remnants of the vision she had shared with the council. Darkness in the flow of time. Whispers, soft, elusive, maddening, calling to her from the edges of existence. She couldn't tell if they came from the future, the past, or something entirely beyond the bounds of time itself. How long had she been hearing them? Hours? Days? Her perception of time had become a blur, slipping away like sand through her fingers. Sky! The doctor's voice broke through the haze, a firm but gentle call back to reality. She blinked, realizing only now that he had been speaking for some time. What? She croaked, her voice weak and rasping. The doctor sighed, his concern deepening. You're getting worse, Sky. You're overusing your ability, and it's taking its toll. Your body, genetically enhanced or not, can't handle this. You need to stop, permanently. Sky shook her head, her defiance cutting through the fog of her thoughts. I can't. Don't you understand? If I stop, no one else will see what I see. No one else can warn them. The danger's coming. They're too great. I have to keep going. I have to. Her words were fierce, but her body betrayed her. A violent coughing fit overtook her, and when she pulled her hand away from her mouth, streaks of blood stained her palm. Her chest heaved with the effort, her breath ragged and uneven. The doctor quickly reached for a cloth and dabbed at the blood, his expression grim. You're killing yourself, Sky, he said, his tone tinged with desperation. Look at you. You're feverish, barely able to stand. Your mind is slipping. You didn't even recognize me when I walked in. Sky's gaze dropped, her hands clutching weakly at the blanket draped over her. She hated to admit it, But he was right. She felt it in every fiber of her being. Her once sharp mind was clouded, her memories fraying at the edges like an old tapestry. She no longer felt like the vibrant, unshakable woman who had stood before the world as its oracle. She felt old, ancient, even like an elderly grandmother succumbing to the slow creep of dementia. But even so, she couldn't stop. "I don't care what happens to me," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "If my death can save lives, if it can stop what I've seen coming, then so be it." The doctor shook his head, his frustration boiling over. "And what if your death doesn't save them? What if pushing yourself like this only means that you're not here when they need you most?" Sky looked away, her eyes distant. The whispers were louder now, their soft murmurs brushing against her consciousness like ghostly fingertips. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was insistent, almost pleading. Were they warnings? Promises? Threats? She didn't know. "I don't have a choice," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "The darkness in the flow of time, it's growing. I can feel it. If I don't do something, it will consume everything." The doctor placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm yet comforting. "Sky, you've done more for this world than anyone could ever ask of you. But you're human, no matter how much the world sees you as something greater. If you keep this up, there won't be anything left of you to fight with." Sky's response was cut short by another coughing fit, this one more violent than the last. She doubled over, her body trembling as blood splattered onto the pristine white sheets. The doctor moved quickly, helping her sit upright and pressing a cool cloth to her forehead. "You need rest," he said firmly. "And for once, you need to listen to me. If you keep going like this, your body will give out completely. You're not invincible, Sky. You're barely holding on as it is." Sky closed her eyes, her head falling back against the pillow. She was too weak to argue, but her resolve remained unbroken. Even as her body betrayed her, even as her mind frayed at the edges, she couldn't shake the certainty that her visions, the darkness, the whispers, the chaos, were leading to something catastrophic. And if she had to sacrifice herself to stop it, so be it. For now, though, she allowed herself a brief moment of surrender, her breath shallow and uneven as sleep began to pull her under. The doctor watched her with a heavy heart, his own resolve hardening. If she wouldn't stop for her own sake, then he would do everything in his power to keep her alive for as long as possible, even if that meant fighting her stubbornness every step of the way. The room was silent now, save for Sky's soft, labored breathing. Her body trembled as she drifted off into an uneasy sleep, her face pale and damp with sweat. The doctor, the one man who had been by her side through the years, through the worst of it, rose quietly from his seat at her bedside. He adjusted the blanket over her fragile frame, as though that could protect her from the cold creeping into her very bones. As he stepped into the adjoining room, his thoughts weighed heavier than ever. "This is my sin," he thought bitterly. Mine and her adoptive father's. He moved mechanically, retrieving medical supplies and the medications that kept her barely holding on. His hands were steady, but his mind raced. He could still see the sterile, fluorescent-lit lab where it had all started. The tests, the injections, the calculations. A pursuit of power, of perfection, that had ignored the price paid in human lives. He had been younger then, ambitious and arrogant, too blind to see the consequences. The experiments had been designed to push the limits of superpowers, to take individuals of potential and mold them into something greater. But more than 95% of the subjects had died. They had convulsed, screamed, and withered into lifeless husks, their bodies unable to withstand the unnatural strain placed upon them. And the survivors? They were hardly better off. Those who lived had become ticking time bombs, their enhanced abilities gnawing away at their sanity, their health, and their very lives. Sky was one of those survivors. Her ability to see into the future had once been minor, a glimpse of a second ahead, classified as A rank level 2. A useful power, but not one that would change the world. Now, after the experiments, her ability had soared to S rank level 3, an unprecedented evolution. She could peer far into the twisting rivers of time, glimpsing events days, weeks, even years ahead. But the cost had been devastating. Her body was breaking down piece by piece, and the mental strain had grown unbearable. She had traded years of her life for this gift, and the gift itself was killing her. What have we done? He thought as he prepared an injection meant to ease her fever. How could we have played with something we didn't understand? With the laws of superpowers themselves, it was blasphemy, born of greed and pride. He remembered her adoptive father's voice, cold and calculating as they had justified their actions. It's worth the risk, the man had said. We're building something greater than humanity ever dreamed of. The ends will justify the means. But now, looking at Sky, the young woman who was no more than a child when they began, he could see only the destruction they had wrought. He had seen it in others before her, the few who had survived, the madness, the pain, the early deaths. But Sky had been different. She had been strong, so determined to use her new power to save others, even as it tore her apart. And it was that strength that made his guilt all the heavier. When she dies, the thought made him falter, and he had to brace himself against the counter. He swallowed hard, his throat tight. When she dies, I will tell the world. I'll tell them everything about the experiments, about her adoptive father's crimes, about my own complicity. He knew he was a coward for waiting, but he also knew that revealing the truth now would only bring more pain to Sky, who still carried the burden of those sins on her shoulders. She wanted to save as many people as she could before the end, and he would let her. Still, he promised himself when her time came, and he was certain it would come far too soon. He would speak. He would tell the world of the arrogance that had led them to tamper with powers they couldn't control. He would make sure no one ever dared to repeat their mistakes. He returned to her bedside, sitting once again in the chair he had occupied for so many sleepless nights. She stirred slightly, her lips moving as if whispering to someone he couldn't hear. Her skin was clammy, and when she coughed, it sounded wet and ragged. The doctor sighed deeply, his heart heavy. He had lived long enough to see his own hair turn gray, to feel his body grow slower and weaker with age, and yet he would outlive her. He was certain of it. Adjusting her blanket once more, he whispered, almost to himself, I'm sorry, Sky, for everything. And in her restless sleep, she didn't hear him. The doctor sat quietly at Sky's bedside, his hands folded and his gaze fixed on her pale face. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, and the faint beeping of the monitors filled the room with a constant, steady rhythm. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and murmured softly to himself. She didn't deserve this, he said under his breath, his voice laced with bitterness. None of them did. But especially not her. His fingers tapped lightly against his knees, a nervous rhythm that betrayed the storm brewing in his mind. He shook his head, his voice growing quieter, almost a whisper, as if the words were too heavy to speak aloud. When the time comes. He paused, his throat tightening as he swallowed back the lump of guilt. When the time comes, I'll face it. I'll confess everything. I'll tell the world what we did, what I did, and I'll take him down with me. The thought of Sky's adoptive father, the man who had orchestrated the experiments, sent a surge of anger through him. But beneath the anger was a crushing weight of responsibility. He had been complicit, an eager participant in the early days, blinded by ambition and the promise of breakthroughs. And now he was nothing more than a man trying to hold together the pieces of a broken soul, one he had helped shatter. His lips curled into a bitter, humorless smile as he leaned back in his chair. Hell, maybe it won't be so bad, he muttered. A little fire and brimstone, some eternal torment, sounds almost peaceful compared to this. He chuckled softly, the sound dry and devoid of real mirth. There was a strange comfort in the idea of punishment, of finally paying the price for his sins. Whatever awaited him after death, whether it was oblivion or judgment, it would be a relief. At least I'll have earned it, he said, shaking his head. I'm not sure what's scarier, eternal damnation, or knowing I've already damned myself 100 times over. His resolve hardened as he glanced back at Sky. Her adoptive father might still be out there, continuing his work, but the doctor swore to himself that it would end. He would make sure of it, even if it meant playing the role of the villain a little longer. What did it matter anyway? He was already condemned in his own mind. One more day, one more act, wouldn't change his fate. He stood up slowly, his joints creaking with the motion, Returning to the monitors, he adjusted a few settings, ensuring that the alarms were configured to wake him if her condition worsened during the night. He lingered for a moment, his hand hovering over the edge of the machine before finally pulling away. "Rest, Sky," he murmured softly. "You don't need to carry this anymore." Satisfied that everything was in order, he stepped out of the room. His own bedroom was small and sparsely furnished, a stark contrast to the rest of the luxurious house. He collapsed onto the bed, his mind still racing despite his exhaustion. The guilt gnawed at him, as it always did, but so did his determination. One day, he would make it right. One day, he would see it through to the end. But for now, sleep claimed him, pulling him into a restless, uneasy slumber.
When Sky Lightville wakes up, she feels slightly better, but something deep inside tells her that this day will be anything but ordinary. It's not the kind of certainty one might have when using powers to glimpse the future. It's more of a gut feeling, an intuitive sense that change is in the air. With the help of her doctor, Sky slowly pushes herself up and moves to the breakfast table. The rapid deterioration of her body over the last few months has been unsettling, and the irregularity in her health's decline makes it nearly impossible to predict how much time she has left. As she eats, her eyes wander to the window, gazing at the city beyond. The first flowers of the season are blooming, and the faint warmth in the air signals the approach of summer. Meanwhile, in one of the smaller satellite offices of the Hero Association, the quiet monotony of paperwork is disrupted by an unusual order. A directive arrives instructing an entire floor of analysts to monitor a seemingly insignificant chaos zone in Area 65. The directive, accompanied by a stream of data gathered and refined by their advanced AI systems, leaves the staff puzzled. The information doesn't seem to suggest anything remarkable, just another decaying chaos zone. The live drone footage displays a desolate city, long abandoned and bearing the scars of war and death. The air around the ruins carries a palpable sense of decay, even through the screen. A thick, white mist blankets the streets, and skeletal remains litter the ground, surrounded by deep violet crystals that seem to grow out of the rubble. The crystals glow faintly, their pulsating light almost hypnotic, as if alive with some kind of energy. One of the analysts, a bespectacled man, sighs and leans back in his chair. What's the point of monitoring this place? Nothing ever changes in these zones. A heavier-set man sitting nearby shrugs. You've heard the orders, same as I have. We don't get paid to ask questions, just to do our jobs. So keep an eye on the stats and quit complaining. As hours drag on, many analysts drift to other projects, their attention divided despite the initial instructions to focus solely on Area 65. The room is filled with the soft clatter of keyboards and idle chatter, revealing that only the bespectacled man and his colleague are still focused on the task at hand. Suddenly, the calm is interrupted by an alert from the AI system. A loud chime echoes through the room as the AI announces, "Anomaly detected. Please review the chaos zone immediately." Most of the analysts wave it off, assuming it's a false alarm, and begin heading out for their lunch break. However, the man with glasses hesitates, a flicker of curiosity pulling him back to his monitor. As he reviews the live feed, his jaw drops and he stammers. Wait, what? On the screen, something new and unexplainable has appeared. A black void, suspended in midair, just above the roof of a building in the Chaos Zone. The man quickly notifies his supervisor, Dr. Walter, and orders the AI to project the live feed onto the main holographic screen. In seconds, a large blue hologram flickers to life in the air, displaying the drone's perspective. The anomaly, a jagged, oval-shaped rift, grows larger before their eyes, reaching about 2 meters in height and 1 meter in width. The edges of the rift shimmer like broken glass, and within, tiny multicolored stars swirl in the darkness. Dr. Walter bursts into the room, his face tense with a mix of confusion and alarm. His eyes lock onto the screen, and a chill runs down his spine. Something about the rift feels profoundly unnatural. "What in the world is that?" he mutters under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. As the drone moves closer, a faint purple light becomes visible within the rift. At first, it's just a single dot, but it soon splits into 3 separate lights. One grows larger, transforming into what looks like a burning violet sun. The room falls silent as the AI processes the data. No recognizable patterns detected, it announces. Walter's thoughts race. Is this another optical illusion caused by the chaos mist? No, that can't be it. The mist doesn't rise beyond 5 meters. Suddenly, something emerges from the rift. A figure leaps out, landing gracefully on the rooftop below. The figure is androgynous, its face blurred and indistinct, but what stands out is its unnaturally wide grin. The grin stretches far beyond what should be possible, sending a shiver down Walter's spine. The figure speaks, but its words are inaudible. The AI quickly chimes in. Attempting to read lips. Results may vary depending on facial proportions. Moments later, a second figure emerges from the rift, towering over the first with an intimidating presence. Why are we here again? We were just here yesterday, the larger figure mutters, its tone laced with irritation. The smaller figure waves a hand as if brushing off the complaint. Patience, First Constellation. I told you, they'll come when I'm finished here. With a resigned sigh, the larger figure folds its arms. Fine, Astralis. Get it over with. Astralis smirks, the grin firmly etched on its face. Oh, I will. Meanwhile, in the Hero Association office, panic begins to ripple through the analysts. Frantic calls are made as they relay their findings to their superiors. Walter, watching the feed from the drone's camera, feels an inexplicable chill run down his spine. It's as if one of the figures is staring directly at the lens. He shakes his head, dismissing the idea as absurd. The drone is cloaked and stationed over 500 meters away. There's no way they could detect it. Still, the gnawing unease remains. As the chaos unfolds before him, Walter can't escape the sinking realization that they've stumbled into something far beyond their comprehension. The Hero Association was in chaos. Confusion and surprise filled the control room as the live feed from the drone displayed the two mysterious figures on the rooftop. Murmurs of disbelief mixed with frantic typing as analysts tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Their appearance, one analyst muttered, staring at the screen. This isn't a visual disturbance or a malfunction. The AI's voice cut through the noise, calm but unnerving. This is not an error. The visual distortion is their actual form. The figures appear blurred to the camera, and their eyes are not reflective points but active light sources. Each figure possesses glowing violet eyes, radiating energy detectable even through multiple filters. The room grew silent as everyone processed the information. On the screen, the smaller of the two figures stepped forward toward the edge of the rooftop, its movements deliberate and otherworldly. It raised its hands, and an eerie stillness seemed to sweep through the chaos-infused landscape. The dense white mist that blanketed the chaos zone began to shift unnaturally. Tendrils of fog coiled and crawled up the building like living entities, converging toward the figure's outstretched hands. Where the mist touched the dark, blurred skin of the figure, it erupted into a glowing violet light, radiating brighter and brighter. As the violet glow intensified, the mist responded in kind, accelerating its movement. A powerful vortex began to form around the figure, pulling the surrounding mist into a spiraling cyclone. The rotation grew stronger and faster, its intensity shaking the drone's stabilizers. Altitude adjustment required, the AI announced. The drone ascended, struggling to maintain a clear view. From above, the scene unfolded in shocking clarity. The entire chaos zone was being consumed by the vortex. The mist spiraled inward, collapsing toward the glowing light at the center of the rooftop. The once still and haunting chaos crystals scattered across the ruined city began to fracture. Their vibrant violet hues dimmed as shards broke off and dissolved into the swirling mist. The system logged the anomaly immediately. Warning: Chaos Zone brightness has decreased by 5%. Total reduction since initial anomaly detection, 11%. The room tensed. Brightness within a Chaos Zone was a direct measure of its strength. A reduction of this magnitude was unprecedented. On the screen, the vortex suddenly slowed. The spiraling mist began to lose its ferocity, and the chaotic wind settled. The glowing violet light dimmed, and the once raging vortex dissipated into silence. The Chaos Zone appeared eerily calm, but it wasn't the same as before. Fewer chaos crystals adorned the ruins, and the mist no longer reached its previous height. The dense fog, once towering 5 meters high, had receded, revealing more of the desolate cityscape. In the Hero Association, the tension was palpable. Everyone stared at the screen, waiting for the next move from the enigmatic figures. But they simply stood there, their blurred forms unmoving, watching the stillness they had created. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, feel free to share it with your friends. If you click on the left side of the screen, you'll find my latest upload, and on the right, you'll see a link to the full playlist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.